And we're live. Welcome to I Drink and I Know Things. Today we are talking about the UK elections and our boy Sargon. Well, UKIP, rest in peace. We'll get to that in a little bit. How's everybody doing here? I'm joined by Voice of One, Hyperborean, and Doku. How you guys?
I'm amazing.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Can't complain.
I'm here.
Oh, did you watch that Batwoman trailer again? It sounds like you almost killed yourself today. That could be the only reason.
That'll be out in a couple of days.
Oh God, that god awful thing.
Vice, I've got a joke for you. What's the difference between Change UK and a toilet? A toilet has a seat.
Pardon?
Oh,
A toilet
right.
has a seat because obviously Change UK didn't get any seats in the MEP elections.
yeah, I know. That's. We're gonna take a look at this. Let me screen share here, if my piece of crap computer will allow it. And you guys will see how much I've been nerding out on Vampire the Masquerade when you see all the tabs open. So don't laugh. Fuck off.
Nerd.
Yeah. I even got the dice roller open. Horrible.
You fucking nerd.
All right, so the Brexit Party won the day, boys. They had, they weren't even a party before, and now they have 29 seats.
Yeah.
For us. Did he pull a rabbit out of his ass? What's going on here?
Well, people just wanted one party, which wanted one thing. So they're just like, fuck it, we'll just vote for this party. They've only been around 6 weeks. Yeah, this should piss people off.
Yeah, I think you can partially thank Theresa May for being a complete absolute failure for that one.
Yep.
We'll get to Theresa May because, yeah. All right. So, Voice, what's your thoughts? Is it the same? Everybody's just like, fuck it, we want out of the EU. So if we're going to send anybody, it's going to be the Brexit Party to tell them to fuck themselves up the ass with Merkel's cock.
Well, I think while the Brexit Party getting 29 seats is good, you have to remember that Labour, Green, the SNP, maybe some of the Liberal Democrats will all join together. So even if Brexit has 29 seats, they could still be outvoted by the Remainers if all those parties come together to try and fuck us over again. I think.
So what you're saying is we should watch out for all of the other winners in this to form a caucus with each other and go against Brexit.
Yes.
Something I didn't think of.
Yeah, no, and you have a great point there. And here's where we get to Theresa May. The Conservatives lost 15 seats. They only have 4 left. The Greens even kicked their ass. What? Nobody? It's that horrible? Nobody's got anything?
Yeah, it's just a shit show.
Here's the thing. Before we started, I was watching a broadcast from the BBC. And they said that the Conservatives and Labour combined have never lost this many votes in like 200 years. As an American, I'm like, wow, we were barely around longer than that. But that's kind of outrageous, isn't it?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but just my personal opinion, I'm not really that surprised considering. Let's look at the state of the just the EU as a whole real quick. Over the course of the past 2-3 years, how many just random parties out of left field that aren't necessarily traditional political parties have sprung up like frickin' weeds? I mean, Brexit is completely brand spanking new. Then there's the one in Italy. There's AFD. There's a lot of newcomers to the playing field, so I don't really find it that surprising.
Yeah, no, and really, is this the death nail of UKIP? I also watched Sargon's response to everything, and he I always knew we were going to lose. It was obvious. The Brexit Party was going to take it. We had a good campaign. I learned a lot. And I think if you want to stand for British values and blah, 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 then you should still join UKIP. Oh, okay. Is he grasping for straws here?
Yeah, pretty much so.
Yeah, UKIP is a dead party. It's pointless to even be anywhere near it at this point in time. Anybody involved with it now will never get into another party. It's dead.
Doku, from American perspective, would you join UKIP if you were in Britain? Because as far as I knew, they were kind of like the Libertarian Party, and the Libertarian Party in the United States is growing, while UKIP just got hit in the teeth with a baseball bat.
All right, so I kind of have like a two-sided takeaway on this one. From the auspice of being like a dead party, it would be interesting to see if somebody came in and kind of reformed it into something a little closer to what the Libertarian Party here in the U.S. is. I think there's an empty stage there, so to speak. So that could be an interesting gamble. I wouldn't bet my money or my reputation on it, but it might be something interesting to watch from a political perspective. The only other reason I would join UKIP is just purely for the sake of being a troll.
Well, no, and real quick, we got a super chat from Brian the Observer. There is no message. If you want me to read something off, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I'll keep my eye on it. I'm done screen sharing now, and thank you very much for supporting the channel, sir. Voice or Hyper, you guys are from there. Voice, you haven't said anything about it, really. I mean, Sargon, I get it, he's grasping for straws, but why put your eggs in this basket? Because you made your bed, now lie in it? I mean, that's admirable, I suppose.
I don't know. I didn't vote for UKIP.
Did you vote?
No.
Same as me. Didn't vote either.
Did you vote? Did you not vote out of protest because, you know, screw the EU, or do you just not vote?
No, so I didn't even get my fucking polling card, so fuck knows where that went. Probably got nicked by the local commies.
I got my voting card, but I'm fed up having to vote for the same evils in every fucking election. You know.
Actually, that sounds a lot like the sentiment of a lot of the moderate Democrats and some of the moderate Republicans here in the last election in 2016, and also in the midterms. Is just kind of a fuck it, same shit, different day. Like, why do I even bother?
See, that's how I was when we did the original referendum. I was like, meh, can't be fucking asked because they'll just fuck around. Lo and behold, what did they do? Fuck around. So I was like, yep. Me not voting was kind of the right thing to do because it was pointless.
Yeah, that sentiment's been around in the U.S. for a while. I know it's different in the UK, but the logic process behind it here in the United States is, yeah, since we have the Electoral College, you know, there are traditionally blue states and traditionally red states with some swing states. So if you're in like New York, Maine, California, most people who are Republican don't even bother voting outside of like a local election or a midterm election. As far as the presidency goes, most of them just say, fuck it. And also, happy Memorial Day to you as well, Joshua, and to everybody else watching. But yeah, that sentiment doesn't really surprise me, because I mean, I kind of had a feeling Brexit was going to do really well. I didn't think they were going to be the big winner, so to speak. But the second I heard Nigel Farage left UKIP, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, this probably is not going to bode well for people like Sargon or Tommy Robinson or Count Dankula.
Well, UKIP wouldn't let Robinson in. He had to run independently, and he got 36,000 votes by himself. No party.
That's right. I forgot about that.
That's not bad. All right.
It's not bad at all.
But the thing is, Joshua in the chat says, Sargon is still campaigning. That video was cringy. Yeah, that video. I watched it all. I did, and it seemed like a man who had rested his political future in a party and just saw everything wiped away and doesn't want to admit it yet. It looks like a man in denial. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I got from Sargon as well. Is you put all your eggs in one basket, dude, and the bet didn't play out. You might as well just say it. Like, stop talking about it. Go back to making fun of SJWs.
Yep. Instead, he's just fucking doubling down.
But what else can you do at that point? Not everybody. I'm not necessarily making fun of him. We might make some jokes here and there. You know, Sargon of Applebee's comes to mind. But hey, whatever. I had to.
Sargon of Applebee's? What? I've never heard that one.
That came out of the IBS, like Tonkasol, Bloodsports, Ralph Retort bullshit, where they were making fun of him, saying he worked at Applebee's, and they were making fun of the fact that he looks terrible in suit and tie.
Oh, I never paid attention to that cancer, so yeah.
It's a good.
It was fun for about a month.
Yeah. But no, it's just, what else can you do other than double down? Really, he's being sued. He's got criminal charges for that stupid tweet. So there's an investigation into him. He's kind of got his back against the wall at this point.
As far as I know, Sargon hasn't been arrested or charged.
Well, I can tell you exactly what you do. Say like, hey, I tried, I lost. Go back to making political commentary. Don't dwell on it. The internet doesn't forget. Don't make it any easier for him. Like, that's what you do.
Okay, let's talk about something a little bit broader. There's people like Medicare who say YouTubers should never enter politics. Is that true?
As a general rule, perhaps, because if you spend enough time and do enough digging, you'll be able to find something to smear somebody with at some point in time. Even if it's something as simple, like, let's say if I ran for a political office, somebody somewhere would find a clip of me saying something either cringy, hyper offensive to the easily offended, or just make fun of me for drinking on a live stream and throwing it out there for the rest of the internet to have a field day with. Yeah, simple, stupid shit that everybody does, but running for political office does put you in a different light. So it's not easy to convince somebody to vote for you and give you any degree of power over their life if they see what you do in your kind of casual, day-to-day. So I would say yes, unless you're someone who's like, I'd say Dr. Steve Tully is probably the one person I say that if he did run for political office, I'd vote for him. Because first off, the dude's a doctorate. I believe it's in sociology and political science. And the dude's professional as shit and makes very concise points and writes books. He's well educated. But just your average YouTuber? Hell the fuck no. Don't open yourself up to the media backlash.
Or the internet backlash. Look what they did to Sargon. And the milkshake thing, that was messed up.
Oh, yeah, well, that's... Okay, I kind of want to talk about the milkshake thing real quick. I can understand having political discourse. I can even, at this point in time, understand the unhinged Antifa freaking commies running around and trying to intimidate people with physical violence that they politically disagree with. But tossing milkshakes at people, like, that is playground bullshit. Like, you're not making a point. You're just making yourself look like a child. It is freaking stupid. Like, haha, look, I throw a milkshake at you because I don't like you. Like, what the fuck? Get out of here.
No, and somebody threw fish at him. Now, that's kind of funny. It was a kipper, too, because UKIP.
Oh, okay, that is kind of funny. Okay, well, so I'll roll something back real quick. If you're gonna pull a childish stunt like that, at least make it funny. Like, milkshake just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just something stupid. The fish thing is funny.
What do you guys think? Should YouTubers run for office, boys?
Well, just for myself, I'd have to delete every live stream I've ever been on, which means your entire channel will be gone. Um, I mean, you could see someone like maybe no, they shouldn't, because unfortunately, you know, a lot of people who run for government, they get gaffes in the papers. You know, they'll say something stupid in the paper, will jump on it. But you know, when you're putting out videos maybe every week or even daily, that's a lot of ammunition you're giving to people. So no, I would say if you're on the internet, stay the fuck away from politics.
Well, actually, here's a good example. I would imagine YouTubers running for political office would end up with a lot of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Like, that would be the majority handful of them, with some exceptions. Because everybody's had a gaffe or a stupid moment here and there, and it would either get taken out of context, or it would be so blown out of proportion that your reputation will be solely standing on the leg of you said something stupid one time, or oh, you get drunk and talk to people on the internet. Like, someone's going to find a way to make you look like a moron, and the general populace that's not engaged in internet culture will immediately think that's just who you are, and there goes your reputation. Like, you'd be fucking yourself over by doing so.
Okay, but as the generations come up and get to voting age and they're more immersed in the internet culture, do you think that will shift and they will no longer care?
It already is starting to shift. I know the easy example would be look at someone like Soph, but even just talking to some of the people that I live around who are parents, you know, I see them at local restaurants and stuff, and I see how their kids act, and I always hear two opinions, and there's rarely anything in between. You either have the hypersensitive, you know, outrage culture who spend far too much time on Facebook or Twitter, and then you have the ones that spend the majority of time listening to like alternative media like YouTube or BitChute, for example. There's no middle ground, but that time is not yet come. Maybe in 5-6 years. But right now in the current political environment, no, not a good idea.
Hyper, you haven't given your thoughts. What do you think?
I'm what? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
I think
I
think that says everything we should say, actually.
Yeah.
Most of this I just haven't been. Most of the stuff with the whole MEP stuff, I haven't been really paying attention for it, because most of it's just a massive clusterfuck.
That's actually a rather concise takeaway.
I mean, to be fair, one of the reasons why I didn't obviously vote in either in the referendum and the MEP election, because I'd rather shit into my hands and clap.
Fair enough.
It's more productive.
And actually, that does raise a question. So, okay, Brexit Party was the big winner in the in last night's election. So let's say you guys get a hard Brexit, tell Brussels to go screw themselves. What do you do after that, though? Because that was the big campaigning point. I mean, you literally named your party the Brexit Party. So you get a hard Brexit, the EU pisses off. What do you do from there?
Yeah, but here's the thing: the MEPs can't force Brexit. That's the point. They're members of European Parliament, not members of actual British Parliament.
Okay, well,
They don't.
I'm more asking, if you do get a hard Brexit, what would be the future of the Brexit Party? Do they just dissolve? What happens?
But that's all that would happen. If fucking dissolve. I think the main reason with the Brexit Party, it came about obviously just to fuck off all the other parties.
Well, if that was the goal, they succeeded rather gloriously.
They did indeed.
I mean, it's I hate to say this because it's cringy and cliche, but it almost feels like real life trolling has somehow managed to, find its tendrils into, actual politics, like actual things that will affect your real life. Like I feel like the whole Brexit thing, in a way, like still being a serious topic of conversation, but it almost feels like a troll, like just a gigantic middle finger.
Mm.
It's like I feel like 4chan could have pulled something like this off and been nearly as successful.
Yeah, pretty much so.
Okay, but moving on to other areas in the EU, there was a major shift towards the right this time around, right?
Indeed, there was.
Well, talk about that a little bit. How do you think that's going to change the landscape within the EU? Are you going to see them maybe slow down on their idea for an EU army? Maybe lower the tax rates that they have throughout the European Union? I don't know. What about the refugee crisis? What's going to happen here?
I would like to hear from the from our British friends first before I comment.
Fuck knows.
I would say that the EU, they'll double down. They're going to think the best way to fight the people they disagree with, the populists, the nationalists, the people who actually give a shit about their country. The EU is going to look at this and go, we have to actually go more extreme, more to the left. And that's what they're going to do. They're not going to try and win back voters. They're going to rush forward with the EU army, and then any country that gets out of line, they'll just send the army there.
So yeah, do you think they're going to tighten the noose?
Fucking right they are.
Oh yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is they're going to do what the Democratic Party here in the United States has done and just go more to the extreme.
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, I can see it happen as well. Because I mean, if you look at how the EU operates, it tends to like to be rather sneaky when it comes to implementing laws and other shit.
Well, they're also extremely authoritarian in their ideologies, collective ideology, I should say, and they also they have players in the UN as well that back them up on that. So I tend to agree with you guys. I do see them trying to tighten the noose and becoming more authoritarian.
And I can tell you this, where do you see the amount of laws they try to pass before October? They will try and get as much shit on us as they can. They'll pass laws where you have to implement these before you leave. They'll try and fuck us at every step.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe you, because we're already starting to see Brussels move into panic mode. So it wouldn't
lose.
I think, didn't Merkel resign?
I don't know. I have a whole bunch of tabs open, so I'm not going to be able to look right now. But yeah, I think she either lost the election or maybe resigned. But I thought I heard she lost.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think she resigned several months ago, or at least said that she wouldn't be the representative of her party. If it's what the what's the name of her fucking party in Germany? I know it has the word Christians in it, which I find ironically hilarious. But
it's a Christian Conservative Party or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. Which again is, I gotta hand it to the leftists. They have a really, really good. Well, they have a talent for being able to brand things and create slogans.
Yeah, she's part of the Christian Democratic Union of Germany.
That's it. Yeah, they have a good way with words.
It doesn't sound totalitarian at all. No, not one bit.
Yeah, it totally doesn't remind me of another German workers' party.
Oh yeah, what was that one again? I forget. It escapes me. I don't. I think they burned all those books.
Yeah, I forget that one's names as well.
I don't know, something about socialism.
Yeah.
But even Italy flung towards the right as well.
Oh, Italy made a well. They were already making gains, but they managed to cement a very strong foothold. So,
Well, Italy's always been fairly conservative anyway. And recently they've been pushing back against the EU because they've been wanting to do more like stimulus stuff for the country. But the EU has been telling them no, so they've just been telling the EU to get fucked, and they've been doing it anyway.
well, I thought it was funny. Hate to derail slightly. I thought it was very funny that they thought they were going to, and when I say they, you know who I'm talking about, thought they were going to manage to shift Hungary and Poland more to the globalist, socialist, open borders mindset, and that didn't happen.
They're trying to do that with Poland.
They tried. It was a massive failure, but they tried.
Yeah, that's not going to work, considering Poland is kind of xenophobic.
Little bit.
Just
But
a tiny bit.
the big surprise for me was Greece.
Elaborate a little bit, because I saw the results from France and Italy. I must have missed Greece. So.
Yeah, no, Greece had a pretty significant shift to the nationalist populist right mindset, which, I mean, in retrospect, I can kind of understand, since they are one of the gateways to Europe, so to speak, along with Italy before they closed down their ports and started finding NGO ships. So, but I didn't see Greece from a political standpoint actually making this much of a gain towards the right nationalist segment. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and also what is going to be the implication for Spain, because now they're essentially, between Spain and Turkey, there's your gateway to Europe. Those are the only two ones left, and they did not swing to the nationalist populist right. Although Turkey was already kind of on the fence anyways. But I don't know. I don't think this is going to bode well for Spain at all. So I think that's what we should be watching here coming up in the future.
Well, I wonder how the situation's going in Catalonia. As a matter of fact, maybe we should do an update episode on Catalonia sometime soon.
Probably the way that's going there is jackboots and totalitarianism.
It wouldn't surprise me. Spain is something not a lot of people have been talking about, and I follow quite a few people who almost exclusively look at European politics and what's been going on with the situation in the EU and nationalist populism. It's been at least a good 6 months since I've seen anybody mention Spain or Catalonia. So might be worth doing a little bit of digging into.
Yeah, I think we will. So we'll be looking into that and do another episode on that sometime soon. Because right when that broke, of course I covered it. I'm a libertarian. They're trying to secede. I was all for it.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal back when they made that push to just not only leave Spain but leave the EU and just say, "Fuck you guys, we're going full." Basically pulling what they did with the Kurds, where they're just saying like, "Fuck everybody." Like, we're going full ethno-state.
Yeah, no, and okay, Aunt Jack in the chat says, I for once got more respect for French than the British in my life. I don't know why, because yeah, UKIP didn't do that well, but the Brexit Party did overwhelmingly well.
Well, and again, that brings me back to my concern about the Brexit Party, and I guess say in the next 4 years what British politics are going to look like, because it'll be interesting to watch, to say the least. Because again, here in the US, there's plenty of people who are single issue voters. Once you win that battle, though, what do you have to campaign on? Forgive college debt, I guess? I don't know. I suspect there will be a lot of political infighting sometime in the near future.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, there always is political infighting. That's nothing new, but this is going to be on a whole new level, I think.
Well, and that's kind of what this last EU election feels like is the paradigm shift, but it's the paradigm shift manifested in something now that's tangible. It's not the BBC or Sky News or whoever the fuck else wants to chime in saying like, oh no, this is a conspiracy, it's just a bunch of YouTubers or a bunch of trolls or it's collusion. It's like, no, this is something tangible that you can't ignore because the results are in, the seats are filled. So I suspect you're going to see a lot of political volatility on the European continent, to say the least.
Which always goes well. I mean, there's never been a couple world wars over there. Oh, wait.
Yeah, that never happened, right? Right, guys? Right?
All right. I mean, a lot of people were saying when it comes to UKIP's downfall that it was Sargon that did it. Maybe he didn't help, but it wasn't him that wasn't trying to talk about the platform. It was the reporters, right?
Yeah, well, I was actually watching last night the Rebel Media live stream, and something I found very interesting. This is a point that Tommy Robinson brought up. Just for a little bit of context, we all know how much CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, et cetera, all love to talk about how Donald Trump won his presidency by basically using Twitter and Facebook and weaponized autism, for lack of a better term, as a campaigning tool and used it to bypass the media. Well, in the case of Tommy Robinson, just as an example, you're pretty much banned from talking about this guy on social media, which is what he attributes to his loss, which I find to be very interesting. So my question here is, do you think it's possible to win a modern election if you can essentially be silenced or unpersoned from something like, say, Twitter?
That's an interesting thought. Real quick to chat, Eldritch God asked who won. The Brexit Party won in Britain, and the rest of Europe, not all of them, not all, but a good portion swung far to the right. And 40, you're just now joining us. Your thoughts on the EU elections, and did Sargon destroy UKIP? Did he kill it?
No, I didn't think he killed UKIP. I just think, well, first of all, I do have a few comments on the Twitter thing, but I don't think that Sargon killed UKIP. I just think that UKIP is not a prominent enough platform with prominent enough members. If you look at the relevancy of like the current UKIP membership, the people who are popular, there's the head of the party who just stepped down yesterday, so he's not relevant anymore. And then you have Sargon, Marcus Meekin, Paul Joseph Watson. I don't believe Milo. No, I think Milo's actually living in the US, if I remember correctly. So you're not talking about a lot of people that are prominent. Sargon might have 1 million subscribers, but how many of those millions of subscribers or something are within the voting age range and also living in the UK? So these people aren't that popular. They're only popular to us because we know of them. You know, not versus, look at Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is, you know, he's been heading the Brexit movement since before the Brexit movement was a thing. You know, since probably, I think it was like late 80s, early 90s or something. So he's had much more time to get popular, grow, and establish some kind of voter base that finds him favorable. You know, so of course Nigel Farage is going to sweep the board.
Yeah, and that's honestly, if I had to blame the failure of UKIP on anything, it's the fact that Farage basically said, screw UKIP, I'm going to go start my own party, and our number one voting platform is going to be Brexit, even if it means being hard Brexit. So it was a single issue voting party with somebody who's already well known, well established. Said that's where I think the ultimate failure of UKIP was, is the fact that Farage was not part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, I just remembered that Mad Dodge had asked a question about, he had directed it towards you, Doku. It was something about like, can you win an election if you're unplatformed? I don't think so. I mean, in the ways today's elections are run, you could still win an election if you don't have a Twitter account. All you have to do is go into television. But the way things are looking, television probably isn't going to be around much longer. You know, you have HBO Prime subscriptions where, you know, it's an app that you download on your phone or your gaming system or your computer. Not that there's any other acceptable gaming system besides a computer, but you can't win future elections if you don't have a Twitter account. It's not even going to be possible, I don't think.
And I tend to agree, which is why at some point in the future, I think we should talk about bring up the media censorship and accountability thing again at some point in time when there's more to talk about. But just as a little aside, I know almost all of my friends have either Facebook or Twitter. Most of them have both, but I can't think of a single one that actually has a Fox News, Blaze TV, CNN, or WAPO or any of those other apps. The only time I see people even looking at that stuff is because they're getting information secondhand that, say, like a YouTuber or someone on Twitter links, or if it gets through the little what's it called on Samsung, like clipboard or sideboard. But as far as like direct interaction, I think it's clipboard. But as far as like direct interaction with these like legacy media outlets, I don't see a lot of interaction with them. So I'm more of the opinion if you're deplatformed from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you're screwed.
You know, that's an interesting point because I get some of my news, especially while we're live, and I just read a random news story. That's because I have the Galaxy S9. So I have an app on it that comes stock that gives me a bunch of news. So I get like Yahoo. I get like Yahoo News. Who checks Yahoo anymore? But that pops up on my fucking app. I mean, who checks that? Does anyone even have a Yahoo see, I even called it a Gmail. It's an email.
The only thing I use Yahoo for now is Yahoo Finance is generally pretty good if I'm watching what a particular stock is tracking, because they have, I think, like 5-minute delay on their stock price. But that's about the only thing I use Yahoo for at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm of the opinion that, you know, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, to maybe a lesser degree, Gab or WhatsApp, or, I mean, even frickin' Instagram. I mean, hell, I know we rag on AOC a lot, but at least she's smart enough to realize if you want to reach a large viewer base and get your message out there, you need to use something like Instagram or like do Twitter videos. That's how you're going to reach the most people, because everybody frickin' has it.
Yeah, but here's the thing also is companies like YouTube think, you know, we're so huge, we're never going to fail. So did AOL. AOL thought that. And then Time Warner merged with AOL and the whole thing blew up in their face. Any company can fail.
And it's true. I think that's also why you see a big push for these companies to essentially work together. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And they don't want competition, because a competitor that doesn't pull the same kind of antics like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube do could easily overtake them given enough time. And I think they're very aware of that. Also, you know, you start, like, for example, if you're YouTube, start collaborating with some of the big media giants that have enough money in their coffers, like CNN or Fox News. Well, there's your extra revenue there. And then say maybe start working with the ADL, the SPLC, maybe talk to, I don't know, Stripe, PayPal.
Are you just going down the list of what they did in the last year and a half?
Yeah, pretty much. But it's, if you think about it from information technology and a social media perspective, you control, between all of those groups, you control the three big things. You control the mainstream narrative that people are always going to watch. You know, you've got trusted names, quote, quote. I say that very jokingly. like Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. People know the names Tucker Carlson, Rachel Maddow, Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper. So you have brand recognition. You have the platform itself, the big three tech giants. And then you have the ability to make money through the payment processors. If you control those three aspects, you control the narrative. So I think what you're seeing now is what you saw back with radio in the late 50s, early 60s, and then with television, televised news networks back in the 60s and 70s. It's a consolidation of power.
Mm-hmm.
We had the SCC to try to even out that playing field back when essentially they became media monopolies. There's like 7 corporations that control pretty much the majority of information that you're going to get through televised networks. Well, now you have 3 on the internet that do pretty much the same fucking thing. I rarely advocate for regulation, but it's gotten so big and so out of hand to the point I think there does need to be something done. What that something is, I don't know.
You just stabbed me in the back. You're arguing for regulation.
It's one of the only times you'll ever hear me argue for regulation. The only other time will be about the Federal Reserve and the Central Bank and the Treasury Department, but that's a completely different topic.
But no, 40, I heard you trying to jump in there. Go ahead, sir.
I was just wondering, were we changing topics, or did we want to stay on the topic of like the MEP elections?
Oh, no, we can stay on topic. It kind of strayed this way because Sargon is involved, so we ended up talking about should YouTubers run for office. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, I don't have a problem with YouTubers running for office. The primary problem that I have with YouTubers running for office, then this is really the only problem, is that there's really only so much education that you can do yourself before requiring some kind of degree in law or some kind of degree in logistics or financial jibbity jobbity, whatever the case might be. So let's just look at Sargon. He understands philosophy to a decent enough degree where he can point out people's bullshit when he spots it, right? He can look at a progressive argument and go, right, that stems from, I don't know, fucking Falguni Chef's, take on, modernist, philosophy or whatever the case might be. This stems from Locke, this stems from Hobbes and Rousseau and blah, 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 blah. So he's good in that regard. But if it came down to like money management and when it comes down to the finer things such as passing laws, there might be a little bit more nuance in terms of that. And so I could understand how someone like Sargon, you would benefit with him being in power. Because personally, I don't agree with him that much on a lot of things. But if I was in the UK, I certainly would have voted for him. Because he's someone who I understand that, even though I disagree with this person, there's someone who argues in earnest. There's someone who is dedicated to their belief system. They're not going to stray from it because, X, Y, or Z. This is what the dogma says or what have you. So I don't have a problem with YouTubers, but I don't think that they would be good in terms of the finer points of politics.
And you brought up a good point, financial. Did he run out of his own pocket? Did UKIP pay for it? Was it a combination of the two? Do we even know?
He's probably running on Patreon, if I was a betting man.
Yeah, that's probably true. I do want to give a little bit of pushback, though. I don't think you necessarily have to have a full education as long as you have some real-world practical experience. Like, I've done logistics, I've done farm work, I do my own finances and investing. I can consistently beat out 5 of the top 10 hedge fund managers in the United States just having learned trial by fire. And the second highest group of millionaires and billionaires in the United States don't even have a college degree. I think the real-world experience is far better than classical education in a lot of fields. I think the problem with a YouTuber trying to run for political office really does boil down to reputation and the fact that their experience doesn't extend doing what we're doing right now and having a a conversation with people on YouTube. Whether we agree or disagree is not necessarily the point, but it's not the same thing as having real world experience or holding a rally in front of a few thousand, if not million people.
But we gotta correct you there, because Sargon started to get, he calls it smeared, or they used his YouTube reputation against him. But either way, it doesn't matter. The end result was this. The end result was he would show up to a debate with the other candidates in his district, and they would refuse to show up. And he would sit there looking like an idiot for 2 hours talking to himself to an empty room. It wasn't good optics, man.
And that's exactly my point. Is if you're going to, and this doesn't extend only to political office, but it is a big key in politics and being able to drum up support for you. You need to be able to at least draw a crowd. Otherwise, again, you end up just a guy talking to himself in an empty room looking like a pseudo lunatic, and that's really easy to bash and smear. And when Sargon said, mainstream media largely does operate in the realm of being smear merchants, he's not entirely wrong. But the thing is, you're giving them the opportunity to do that. They tried to do it with Trump, but here's the difference between Sargon and Trump. Trump can completely sell out an auditorium. Sargon can't.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that he's had so many mistakes in the past. Now, I think if he knew that he would at some point run for office, that maybe he wouldn't have made these mistakes initially. But the point is that you can't. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have that much love for the alt-right. They are funny as fuck. Don't get me wrong, but you can't call people white niggers, and you can't say, "Oh, I wouldn't even rape you," and then expect to be voted into office. Right? I'm sorry. It's, as much as people like to go, "Oh, optics," it's like, but yeah, optics do matter to some degree. You're absolutely right. He can't sell at an auditorium. He looks like a fucking crazy person sitting up there talking to himself. And these things that he's done in his past, they're funny. I think they're funny, but the average person is going to look at that and go, what the fuck is this guy? Why is he calling people niggers and threatening to not rape someone? Like, what the fuck is going on with this guy? What is he about? They're going to think he's fucking weird because they don't operate in the same bubble as we do.
Well, and that's the thing. I guess probably the best example, to use the 4chan terminology, the normies, when they hear PewDiePie saying one thing that then gets plastered and smeared on all of these large mainstream media outlets, well, none of them even know who PewDiePie is. They don't watch him. I guarantee you, if you walked up to any random person on the street between the ages of 30 and 50 and asked them what PewDiePie's latest video was about, they probably wouldn't know if it was about media drama between Pro Jared or James Charles, or if it was him doing 12 minutes of talking about memes and doing his little meme review show. They would just know that one thing that the Washington Post said about him that one time, and that's it. So it brings me back to my point. The problem with YouTubers is reputation, and if you do enough digging, you'll find something to smear somebody with and completely ruin their reputation. That's why I stand by my statement. YouTubers should not run for political office. Unless you're squeaky clean.
Yeah.
Well, no, and
we all know Sargon is most definitely not squeaky clean.
Well, no, and the thing is, like, even if I ran, they would use what 40 just said against me. And 40 was quoting Sargon. Those were quotes. It wasn't 40's words.
Yeah,
they were Sargon's words.
That wasn't a quote. I didn't call anyone a nigger. I mean, I was just those were quotations. You can't get mad at me.
Well, exactly. I mean, not even just that. Like, not even quoting what somebody else had said that the average person would find to be offensive, if not abhorrent. But even just trying to have a debate with somebody or trying to have a conversation, like what they did with Andy Worski before he fell off the rails. But when he tried to facilitate that debate between Styx, Sargon, and Richard Spencer, it's like, oh, you're giving them a platform. Now all of a sudden, Andy Worski is an alt-right neo-Nazi by association. And that's what the media does.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of guilt by association involved too.
No, like you were saying earlier, Mad Dodge, maybe in 4 to 8 years, this will change. But as it is right now, it's far too easy to take somebody out of context or use the guilt by association card or just use the is and ism backpedal to essentially destroy someone's reputation. So until people actually, the majority of people who aren't in the realm of internet banter and political talk from alternative media sources, you're not gonna win yourself any brownie points. It's a bad idea. The only way that's gonna change is when people start realizing, guess what? Sargon was actually right when he says the mainstream media is primarily in the source of promoting, or in the business of promoting outrage culture and smearing people that they're ideologically opposed to. Most people still think CNN and Fox News are credible. Neither of those sources are, whether you agree or disagree with them.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's not even to speak. Oh, sorry, go on, man. You haven't said anything the entire time.
Oh, me?
Yeah, were you going to say something?
No, I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Did you want to say something?
Oh.
Okay. All right. That's not even to speak like of just society at large, where we go through these we go through the motions almost. You know, there's outrage cycles, it seems. You know, in the early 2000s, 2000 fuck, when was 9/11? Like
2001?
2001. Yeah. Fuck. I remember watching it. I just don't like really give a fuck. So from the period of like 2001 to like 2006, if you weren't a patriot and if you weren't a, red bleeding American, you were a Taliban. You were one of them rag-headed terrorists, and then, it's a complete opposite side of the coin. That's not even to say that now things have switched to the extreme opposite of that. Not even accounting for outrage cycles, it seems, going back to like, the prohibitionist era and all that other dumb shit. So there's always going to be smear merchants. There's always going to be people there to capitalize on bullshit. And unfortunately, I don't think the average person cares enough about that. And when they do pay attention, they're probably going to be absorbing that kind of content anyways. I don't know, it's very few people that are able to kind of step outside the bounds of that bullshit avenue.
Well, even like during Vietnam, there was all this fucking ridiculous shit. It's like, oh, if you don't agree with fucking us going, the American army going to Vietnam, you're a commie and shit like that. It's always been the same bullshit.
That kind of goes back to a point that I like to make from time to time. If you have the majority of the population that is working 9 to 5, if they have kids, they're concerned about, okay, what did you learn in school? Let me help you with my homework. You got to eat dinner. You get your news in 60 minutes. And the primary concern you're worried about when going to bed is, what do I got to do at work the next day? Or have I paid off my mortgage or my student loan? Actual real world shit that directly affects you. You're not necessarily paying attention to the larger picture of, what does so and so actually believe, what's going on across the pond, let alone have enough time to do your own research and formulate a well-informed opinion outside of whatever talking head on Fox News or CNN tells you. And people just take it for fact because they simply just don't have the time, or they're just not concerned with it. They're not engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely it's unfortunate, but that is extremely true.
It is unfortunate because I mean, if back in the day, oh God, I sound like an old man. Let me go get my rocking chair, my shotgun, and my spittoon. Back in the day, how did people get elected? What was the political system before? Okay, I'll use an example that Mad Dodge should appreciate. There was still fighting going on in the Civil War simply because mail didn't travel that quickly. So the war had already ended, but yet you still got people in Texas shooting and killing each other when, you know, the South surrendered, treaty peace has been made, but yet there's still people dying. And, you know, go back even further than that. Back in the early days of the colonies, how did you elect someone? Well, you stood in the literal town square and you talked to people face to face. You had town hall debates. You know, that's not how it happens now. It's televised. They try to dress it up as such, but it's not. Go back even further. Let's look at the Roman Empire. You know, the plebeians didn't have a say, but what did they do? They all stood outside of the frickin' whatever government building that they had an issue with, and they'd sit there and they'd protest. Now instead, what do you have? You have mainstream media conglomerates that are all working together, talking to people. You know, actual political collusion coming from, you know, within the country that supposedly is claiming foreign entities are doing stuff, but they collude and control the narrative, and all of a sudden you have people walking around doing slut walks and wearing pink pussy hats on their heads, protesting whatever the media feeds them.
Yeah. Did you guys at all, by chance? So I know the main source of the MEP elections was the UK. That was the focal point of the MEP elections. But did you guys pay attention to anyone else by chance? Any other countries that matter?
I saw some of the results from France, but I don't really understand what their parties are. Same with Italy, but I do know they went towards the right.
Le Pen is essentially a nationalist populist. She's not like Viktor Orban. Yeah, she's not that far to the nationalist populist side, but she's not Macron. But they haven't had these are the EU elections, so she still has to translate her victory into a turnout in the domestic elections, which I think she'll do. But honestly, Macron has screwed up so much over the past 6 months, that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. If he actually manages to win, I'll actually call bullshit and say it was rigged, because I don't see him winning any way, shape, or form. Greece swung to the nationalist populist right. Mm-hmm. Italy maintained its foothold, gained a little bit. Germany's national populist, I believe it was AfD, they gained some ground. Poland and Hungary, they maintained their right-leaning position. And there's a lot of Eastern European bloc countries that solidified the same sort of sentiment. All in all, if my job was dependent on the survival of the EU and I worked in Brussels, I'd be sweating bullets right about now.
Yeah, National Front or Front National, whatever you want to call it, in France, I think has 23 seats. They lost once. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so they had 23 seats. They lost one since this last election. The moderate Democrats, or the Democratic movement, gained 23 seats as well. So Democratic movement and the Front National are both tied for 23, and the runner-up is the Green Party. Funny enough. AfD got 11% of the votes, relative to the SPD, the Green, and the CDU. The what was CDU? Is like Christian Democratic Union or something like that. Merkel's party.
Yeah, that's Merkel.
Seats. Yeah, they lost 5 seats, but they still maintained 28% of the vote. What was SPD? I can't remember. I might have to look that up really quick. Social Democratic Party of Germany. Okay, so communists.
Yeah, I believe there was a party like that sometime around the 1920s.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
I forget their names.
What was
that quote from Churchill? The fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascists. Rather prophetic.
Can't remember who fucking what were the Greek elections like? I actually can't remember.
If I remember correctly, I don't know the name of the party, but they did swing more to the nationalist populists at the sovereignty side. We'll just start calling it that. It's easier.
Oh, New Democracy. That's who fucking swept it. Okay. And then what was the other party? Because there are two parties that sweep it constantly. It's New Democracy and the Coalition of the Radical Left. Sirza.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking it, man. Yeah, so the New Democracy, which is like an old guard democratic, like think of them like our Democrats, and then Sirza, which is like a far left movement.
Yeah, they don't really have much of a far right lean there in Greece outside of like the small coastal villages.
Yeah, the really the only right leaning party is Golden Dawn. I mean, Golden Dawn habitually comes in at like 5 or 6%, which is, you know, they typically range between 5-10% of the vote share. But I mean, even then, Golden Dawn is like actual straight up fucking fascists, you know. And I don't mean that as in lay Donald Trump fascism. I mean that as in, you know, honk Hontler, you know.
Yeah, they're like Mussolini style fascists.
Yeah, exactly. Golden Dawn are actual fascists. I don't, you know, that's the only way to put it, really. But they didn't do well this election, I believe.
Although the thing is, Golden Dawn actually did better than most people thought they would do, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, especially since there was news. I think it was Golden. Oh fuck, I can't even spell Golden. Dawn.
Well, they formed a caucus with another party, if I remember correctly. I forget who, but between the two of them, they actually managed to gain some slight influence.
Yeah, here it was. It was the end of last year, December of last year, 2018. Golden Dawn was actually banned from Crete, and so they lost a few members. They lost quite a bit of their voting base. So that's probably why they're down lower than usual, because I think this last election they came in at like 5% or something like that, when usually they are up towards like 10%-ish. So, yeah, but
the most interesting one is definitely Greece out of all the countries. The three countries to watch. I mean, everybody always talks about the UK, France, Germany, but honestly, I would say if you want to keep an eye on something, Italy, Greece, and Spain. That's where you really want to be focusing your attention, because that's going to tell you what's going to happen within the next couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, and that's really weird to me, because Greece, of all the European Union member nations, you think Greece would be the one to swing to the right, but for some odd reason, you know, New Democracy and the radical left group ended up getting like 50% of the vote share. But it's just like Greece has been bent over the barrel habitually by Brussels, by the EU, by Germany, essentially, by German banks. You think that they would swing to the right, but they fucking haven't.
Well, you also have to remember from an economic standpoint, this goes all the way back to the early 2000s, but didn't really become a major talking point until the whole 2008 to 2010 financial crisis. Greece is essentially dependent upon support from the EU and EU-backed banks, because they're, to this day, still extremely high in debt, a debt that their GDP could never pay back. And their population has a lot of socialists, you know, very heavy Bernie styles welfare state aspects to it. So it goes back to the same basic political strategy that a lot of the pro-socialist, heavy welfare state Democrats here in the U.S. use. Nobody's going to vote against their own self-interest. If I promise to forgive your debts, if I promise you a strong social safety net, free healthcare, free education, we'll cap interest rates, heavy regulation, centralized government power. If you're already sucking at the government teat, there's no way in hell you're going to vote against that. And Greece is a prime example of it.
Yeah, it's just you know, the fixed interest rates and all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, all that shit's very tempting, but the problem with Greece is that you'd think that they'd have a proud democratic foundation. You know, our people founded democracy in the West. We founded, you know, we were the ones who gave the Romans republicanism. You know, we are the spreaders of democracy. You'd think there'd be a bit of a pushback, because the way it is right now, the way the deal's cut, German banking systems, right? Members of the EU Parliament, members of or not the EU Parliament, sorry, the European Commission, right? The Commission gets a say on Greek economic reform policies, right? It's the Greeks that are suffering from the EU ultimately more than anyone. And so you'd think there'd be a bit of a pushback, because if the Greeks try and push some kind of legislation reform in terms of economics and say, right, let's raise the interest rate just a little bit, let's have the Greek government take in a little bit more money, call in some money from those debts and everything. Maybe we stop selling our ports to German banks. Maybe we stop selling government assets, such as the what was one of the things they sold off? The public water system to Athens has been sold off to a German bank. You'd think they'd say, right, let's stop selling off our assets, raise interest rates a little bit, collect a bit more money as a government, try and pay off our national debt, and then maybe get the fuck out of the EU and form some kind of Eastern European bloc style of an EU. You'd think they'd be the founders of that. They'd be the cornerstone of an example of what not to do and why you shouldn't align with the EU. And yet they habitually feed into this narrative where, yes, the EU's great. Everyone has to support them. I mean, they're fondling German balls by their tongue as we speak.
Well, and that's the thing. You bring up two cautionary tales to anybody listening. The first is if you consider yourself to be a sovereign nation, if you want abilities to say how your country is run, how your financial system is run, how you interact with other countries within the European bloc or just other sovereign nations, the one thing you don't want to do is give up your sovereignty, give up essentially what it boils down to at this point in time. Don't let yourself be beholden to a European central bank and replace your currency with the euro, because now guess what? You're lumped into the same pool as every other country. So you don't really have that much of a say. You only have a bit of a say. So that's problem number one. And problem number two, don't neglect history. Don't neglect your cultural heritage, which is essentially what's happened in Greece. Hence why they are now essentially lapdogs for the people sitting in Brussels.
Well, hasn't Germany even started to slide towards the right as well? So,
a little bit. I mean, as we said previously, AfD got, what was it, like 11%? Yeah, about 11% of the vote. So, I mean, but even then, let me take a look. Christian Democratic Union at 29%. So Merkel's party is at 29%. The Greens are at 20%. The SPD, the far left radical group, right, commies, are at 15%. I mean, for fuck's sake, if you look at the Greek elections, I think the communists got 5%. So it's just like far left parties in Greece are not doing that well. But if you look at Germany, I mean, fuck, man. Like, they are the new Soviet Union at this rate. Fucking hell.
Well, and this is the problem with Greece and kind of what I was touching on. Yeah, it might be nice having because Greece's GDP and local economy hasn't been good for the past decade now. They've been having a lot of internal issues. The open borders migrant people or pundits are not exactly helping that. But the other big issue is if they were to detach themselves from the EU, they're financially as a country screwed. So they will continue to suckle on the EU ECB teat until the rest of the EU starts to falter economically, and they already are. There's an interesting article the other day. Adjustable rate mortgages in Denmark are now moving into the negative interest rates.
Oh my god. The negative interest rates.
Yeah, the bank is literally paying you to hold on to a mortgage, which is mind-boggling.
What?
Why am I not investing or putting my money in German banks right now?
Well, this is in Denmark, and it's for adjustable rate mortgages only. But again, that's something that doesn't happen. Banks charge you interest rates. That's how they make money. Pay me for a burger today, and I'll pay you back the other. The old Popeye quote. What's his name? come on, don't make me sound old. You know what I'm talking about. A cheeseburger today and I'll pay you back Tuesday. But that's how banks make their money. So if you're seeing even just one country rolling into the fact that I think it's the 3-year, the 5-year, and the 10-year mortgage rate is moving into the negatives. So the bank has to pay you money for you to keep your mortgage. That speaks of a much greater financial problem. And now that you're tied to the euro, that's not a good sign.
The quote is, "I'd gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today."
Ah, thank you. That's what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's definitely extremely telling. The fact that you have a negative interest rate. Has that ever been done in history? I wonder. I don't think so. But I mean,
I can't think of an example, and I'm an econ nerd. This is a first for me. Like, I scratched my head when I saw this. I was like, wait a second. I don't agree with the idea of central banking. I don't like fiat currency. I don't agree with the Federal Reserve. But this is. I'm surprised this is not being talked about more, because this is complete undermining of the system that's been in place ever since 300-400 years. I believe it started in Britain, actually. It's very telling. I would not want the financial stability of my country at this current point in time to be tied to the euro or the European Central Bank or the lawmakers in Brussels.
Yeah, because there was something I saw a while ago. I doubt I could find the article. I should have saved it to my Discord or something. But there was something I saw quite some time ago about how basically there's a ton of what's the official French currency, like francs or something like that.
The franc.
Yeah, the franc. There's actually a ton of francs, there's a ton of Deutschmarks, and there's a ton of drachmas in reserve. Kept in reserve. They're not in circulation, they're simply in reserve. And that should tell you something about the faith that people have in the European Economic Zone. Like, that sounds fucking awful. If you have to have your own national currencies set in reserve, then you obviously don't trust your kind of like your euro, your intercontinental currency, your economic bulwark currency. You obviously don't trust it all that much. And I know very little of economics. You know, I read one book by Thomas Sowell, so I don't want to claim to know anything in particular, but that doesn't sound as though a lot of Europeans have faith in the euro. That
Well,
sounds atrocious.
A lot of reason for that comes from pressure from Brussels. And one of the things keeping the euro afloat, and I guarantee no banker or economist will tell you this because it's sort of a knowledge they don't want you to have, but it's not that difficult to figure out. They don't want sovereign currencies floating around and being openly traded on the Forex willy-nilly, because now that's competition with countries that have both a sovereign currency but also accept the euro, and ultimately it undermines the euro. The euro is essentially being artificially propped up. Kind of in the same way the US dollar is when it comes to oil, but that's a different conversation that boils down more to commodities trading and some stuff with the World Bank and a few treaties. But the euro doesn't have that same kind of luxury that the US dollar does as being the reserve currency. The only way that they can keep the euro from not completely collapsing is if European EU bloc countries continue to trade the euro and not trade sovereign currencies. It would only take Britain, 2 or 3 European bloc countries, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, even Greece, actually, and then either France or Germany to just say, we accept the German mark, or we accept the franc or the British pound. Smart move by Britain to continue to use the pound, by the way. Mm-hmm. It would completely undermine the euro at all. Like, it wouldn't have the same kind of value that it does.
Yeah, because like the Deutschmarks and the francs aren't in circulation. If I remember, France and Germany takes exclusively euros. I think. I know Germany takes exclusively euros. I don't remember.
Well, that also ties into the crap. What's the right way to put it? The idea of being like free travel between European EU bloc countries, having an EU passport, not like a British passport or a French passport, having essentially a universal European continent currency. That's what keeps this whole system working. They want a single homogenous continent, not a France, not a Britain, not a Germany, but one European bloc. And that's all contingent on maintaining a stable financial and travel system. And the only thing that keeps the euro going is, first off, not having competition between any other sovereign member bloc nations. And the other thing is a high velocity of money. They want that European bill to change hands as much as possible because it keeps the value up. But if I say I opened a bakery in France, and somebody traveled from Germany and they had to exchange their euros into francs because I only accept francs, well, all of a sudden, there's a lot of euros that are just sitting in a teller drawer somewhere at an airport or a train station. They're not changing hands. And eventually, given enough time, the euro is going to start to lose value. Because if I don't accept the euro as legal tender, well, people are going to start using whatever legal tender is. Because it's a fiat currency. So that's why they have all that currency in reserve. And the way Brussels puts pressure on these countries is, well, if you don't accept the euro as your national currency, you get penalized.
Well, yeah, they were doing that to Great Britain, so because they refused to give up the pound, right?
Oh yeah, that was the start of the rather tumultuous relationship between the European Union and the UK. Was the fact that they would not give up the British pound and change over to the euro as their national currency.
Yeah, and one of the biggest like principal arguments is the fact that I'm trying to remember when it was like 1993. The 1993 was the God, I can never remember how to pronounce it. The Messerschmitt, if that's how you say it.
Messerschmitt.
Messerschmitt. Thank you. Was the 1993 was the implementation of the Messerschmitt Treaty, and that was essentially that turned the European Common Market into the EU, essentially in 1993. And that was something that the British people didn't necessarily sign up for. You know, they wanted to be included in a common markets. You know, maybe there's common trade regulations. You know, toothpaste can't have, you know, fucking cyanide in it, for instance. That's a general agreement. Maybe no one wants that. Everyone agrees to it. Maybe there's a common currency. But no one initially, aside from the French and the Germans, in terms of major powers, no one agreed to any kind of centralized governance. And the British certainly did not agree to that. They entered the common market for common trade regulations. And come 1993, that fucking all fell apart, it seems.
Well, and what they tried to replicate with the euro is what the US dollar is, where if you're going to do trade on the international market, let's say I'm using the Japanese yen, and I want to trade with Brazil. The two currencies get converted to US dollars and then reconverted back to whatever the local currency is. Hence why someone like George Soros can make a crap ton of money on the Forex market, because all you have to do is trade the fluctuations between other international currencies, knowing that the anchor is the US dollar. So as long as you can predict what the dollar is going to do, you can make a ton of money. But the problem with the euro is... sorry, was I roboting?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. Let me know if I'm good now.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, no, the internet connection here has been going wonky. We've had storms rolling through. But no, the problem that the euro had is it's not trading as if like I was coming from Germany and I wanted to exchange whatever they decide the local currency is going to be to whatever, say, France or Britain decides their local currency is going to be. And the euro is just the medium of exchange to determine is my mark worth more than a franc, or is my pound worth less than a mark? You know, it's not an anchor. It's a universal currency that's supposed to be used by all the European bloc countries. That might sound nice in concept, but here's the major problem. If you look at the GDP and the productivity and debt of member bloc countries, Germany might have more or less debt than, say, France. Maybe France has more productivity. Maybe the manufacturing sector in France or the agriculture sector had a boom. Maybe they had a really good year in producing wine. You don't give the ability markets to balance out and have a flexible adjustment of value because everything's tied to a European central bank that prints euros. It's not a viable economic system.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really funny the way that if you look at like if you look at like essentially how predatory France and Germany, especially France and in Eastern Europe, if you look at the way they treat the Romanians and the Bulgarians in terms of like shipments of natural gas, they will ship natural gas back to France at a much cheaper rate, but they'll sell it to the locals at a kicked up price because they know that like the Polish what's it called, like the Piots or something like that. I can't remember. It's, I don't know, fucking Polish and their fucking pronunciations, right? But they know that the Eastern European markets are far more stable in terms of their currency. You know, so they'll sell natural gas to the Serbians and everything at a jacked up price, and they'll probably take the, you know, Polish Piots and they'll translate that one Piots into, you know, €5 or whatever the exchange rate is. So I can imagine how a lot of these intercontinental gas companies or energy companies and everything are basically making shit tons of money off of, you know, selling super cheap gas at a boosted rate in Eastern Europe.
Oh yeah, it's been a problem for almost 4 decades now, actually. It all stems back to the fact that, you know, let's say Greece has a bad year. They have a lot of debt. You have one country that has, you know, a socialist party that gets put in place, and they up the welfare state. They up the taxes. The local economy, as far as this one block state, might not be doing very well. Who takes the hit for it? If you can't trade currency using, say, the euro as the medium of exchange, or at least, you know, the fulcrum of the scale. That's the best way to put it. The euro doesn't act as a fulcrum. It acts as a universal currency, which is unfair to every single member block state, because when one state has an economic failure, another state has to essentially take the burden for it. They have to take the hit. Mm-hmm. Hence why the euro has always been a somewhat controversial medium of exchange. But as far as the globalists are concerned, it should be a brilliant idea. We should all have a one world currency. That idea has since been proven to be very short-sighted and naive, because economically it doesn't work.
Well, no, and anything else you guys want to talk about the EU elections or any other topics? If not, then we might just go an hour and a half tonight. I don't have anything else left about the EU elections, honestly. And we're all three Americans here now. The two British participants left.
I am kind of surprised. The two Brits we had here didn't really have much to say. I think we're actually more interested than they were.
Yeah, it seemed that way.
Yeah, they've basically gone full fuck it mode. I don't care.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can blame them. I mean, if the objective was to leave the EU, that seems pretty much, cemented. I don't see any reason to give a fuck anymore. If I was
Yeah,
British.
I can't disagree. Like if you were a Remainer, you wanted to remain. If you were pro Brexit, you wanted to leave the EU. There's not really a whole hell of a lot else to say about it, and that seems to be the major the major motivation for voting one way or the other.
Yeah. Although I will say one other thing. Now that it is essentially cemented that the UK is probably going to leave the EU, right? Theresa May has stepped down, and her legacy has essentially been cockslapped, by all these people voting for Nigel Farage's Brexit party. I think one of the things to keep a lookout for is who gets elected PM come the end of June, and also what the Eastern European bloc countries are going to do in response to what has essentially been a vast undertaking of, not only socio-political reform in terms of the British, but also a little bit of economic reform as well, it would seem. So it'd definitely be worth it to pay attention to the Polish and to the Hungarians, especially the Hungarians. I think that'd be very interesting if those two countries broke away from the EU. Greece, I wish the Greeks would do it, but I don't think they will. But the next step is to essentially sit back and await everyone's response, I think.
I know I already mentioned Spain, Italy, and Greece as being three countries to watch. I did neglect one, and they're a very important country. Keep an eye on Turkey.
Oh. Are they even part of the EU? Hold on. I don't think they've been accepted.
I don't think they are, but they are one of those other gateways to Europe countries.
Yeah.
And they are a member of NATO, and they are having a shift where they used to be more secular in their politics. They are now going full Islamist. So their days in NATO are numbered, I think.
So Turkey is one of the EU's main partners in the Middle East. Excuse me, English. One of the EU's main partners in the Middle East, and both are members of the European Union. Turkey, they're part of like a customs union and everything like that. But Turkey has been an applicant to the EU since 1987, but since 2016, accession negotiations have stalled. So it sounds as though they're a pseudo member. They're like a half-assed member.
It sounds like they're a member in economics. It sounds more of like they're like a middleman between the EU and the Middle East economically, and I know for a fact when it comes to migration. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on Turkey, because most of the migration traffic that comes into the EU has either shifted to Spain. Italy has closed its ports, but anybody that goes into Greece, they come from Turkey.
Yeah,
at least the vast majority of them, and that's mostly Syrian refugees, Iraq, Afghanistan. You can throw whoever else you want in there. Lord knows where half these people come from, because they lie all the time about it.
I know Libya and Morocco are actually a lot of Libyans and Moroccans coming to the Greek ports.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll say the four most important countries right now, considering the way these elections turned out, as far as the health of the EU and Europe as a whole, is really going to be hinged on what happens in Spain, Italy, Greece, and Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's still wherever France and Germany go, the EU goes at this point. But I see what you're saying. If you want to check the how the wind is blowing, you look at those countries, so to say.
Yeah.
Well, and also France. Sorry to cut you off.
You're good.
France and Germany can't support the entirety of the EU bloc on their own economically. And if any country is going to be an economic burden, it's going to be one of those four I previously mentioned. So that's why you want to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and I mean, even France, as we had talked about previously, you have the national rally, or Front National, taking was it 23% or some 24% of the seats available to the French members of the European Parliament. So you have a fair amount of people in France that are getting sick of the EU and just say, right, let's revert back to the franc. Let's be independent of ourselves. Let's form our own trade unions and all that other good stuff. So even France is getting rather dicey, especially since Macron keeps fucking his own party up the ass as well.
Well, and also you gotta remember the reason I bring up economics is because I'm not trying to stroke my econ nerd Epine here, but something important to note: what started the whole Yellow Vest protests was a petrol tax.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're going to raise taxes? This goes back to what I was saying, where if you're supporting countries that are a net loss for the European bloc member nations, the other countries are going to have to make up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, everybody was mad about that tax. That tax was pushed by the freaking climate change people. And then you saw the Green Party come in second all across Europe. What's up with that? Sounds like they want higher taxes to me.
Well, I can guarantee you it's not gonna quell the Yellow Vest protest if that's the decision they choose to go with.
Yeah, and I mean you're right to say that it is the Green parties across Europe that are pushing for those taxes, but as you had said, the Green Party in France, they came in like third with 13.47% of total votes in terms of the members of the European Parliament, the seats that are available to them. So I mean, the Green Party in France came in third, at 13%. That's in terms of European politics, that's pretty fucking awful. So a majority of France, I think it's fair to say the remainder of 13.47% probably doesn't want those taxes. So I can see how the Yellow Vest protests would continue.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see how things play out when domestic elections actually get tallied. So EU elections are one thing. We'll see if any of these nations that have kind of swung more to the nationalist populist side of things manage to maintain some sort of influence. We're also going to have to look at the laws that the characters in Brussels will be pushing coming here in the next couple of months, because I have a suspicion that undermining how much of a say a sovereign EU bloc nation or country might be stifled.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see. I mean, even in France, some of these domestic elections, it'll be interesting to see who actually starts to take power. Because I mean, if the MEP elections are an indication of things to come, then the European Union is it's fucking dead in the water. It's shooting fish at a barrel at this point.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. And I'll let Doku have the last word here, I guess, because I think that's a good spot to pretty much end it off. We'll just stick to the EU on this episode. So we did jump around a little bit, but we were also talking about Sargon, so YouTubers does come into the whole thing. So there was a connection, people. All right, go ahead, Doku, and get us out of here.
Well, first off, I need to say I wouldn't even have an intellectual conversation with you, Mad Dodge. Jeez, what are you talking about? There's my Sargon joke for the day. No, I think this is a sign of things to come. It's kind of the pinky toe in the water, so to speak. It's the pendulum swinging. I will be very curious to see how the economic situation plays out as all of the new shakeup in European politics starts to settle in. The domestic elections will be interesting to watch, to say the least. I think this is just the beginning of something that is going to be rather swift, rather violent, and I think you're going to see sort of the same thing we saw here in the United States in 2015, 2016, where there's going to be a lot of divisiveness, there's going to be a lot of conflicting opinions, and I think the authoritarian aspect that is Brussels and the European Union itself are going to be scrambling to maintain any inch of power they possibly can, because the way things are looking, it doesn't look like the EU is going to enjoy the same kind of what I guess you could pass for stability that they have in the past, which might be good from a sovereign level in the long run, but in the short term, very much a violent shakeup. So that's my takeaway from all of this. It'll be a very interesting 2020, to say the least. So that's what I got to say.
Yeah, no, and thank you everybody for coming out. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. There's a Patreon link down in the description. Also my BitChute. Just in case the YouTube overlords be like, oh, you were monetized for a month, now we're kicking you off permanently. You know, that could always happen. So go follow us over on BitChute also. Good night, good luck, and yeah. Fucking hell, Sargon. Fucking hell.